Okay, let's get into this. If you look up at the sky tonight, you feel that, don't you? That kind of ancient pull, this fundamental human dream of actually leaving Earth, heading into space. What does that spark in your imagination? What amazing things might you see? Or what challenges would you face? It's a really powerful idea.
It really is. And that dream, often, it's fueled by this deep curiosity, wondering if there's intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. That's presented in these sources as the initial spark, that core human drive pushing us outwards.
Exactly. And yeah, we've been digging into this whole pile of sources, documents, notes, even some audio clips, all focused on this one theme, reaching for the skies, space exploration, what it's really like, and how we relate to the cosmos.
Yeah, our mission here for this deep dive is really to unpack all that material. We want to pull out the key insights about those big aspirations, the very real physical and mental hurdles of leaving the planet, the impact we're already making out there, and even how the words we use, shape how we think about the universe.
Right. Think of it like a journey. Starting with that starry-eyed dream, but then getting into the complex, really demanding reality of actually, stepping out there. So let's see what the sources tell us about how that journey kicks off.
Okay, so according to these sources, it really starts with that deep human pull you mentioned. Space travel isn't just like a science project. It's framed as making dreams real, finding the next frontier for explorers, kind of like those old voyages across oceans, but, upwards.
That feeling of pushing boundaries.
Exactly. And that big question, is there intelligent life elsewhere? That's highlighted as a really significant driver. It pushes us to look beyond Earth. It's more than just being curious. It's a fundamental question about where we fit in the grand scheme of things.
But as the sources make really clear, turning that dream into reality is, well, incredibly tough. It takes massive preparation. We're talking about people, astronauts now, maybe passengers, later needing really extensive training.
Oh, absolutely. The sources detail these pretty rigorous mental and physical tests they have to get through, and time spent in special training facilities. It's not just about being physically fit. It's about mentally preparing for an environment that's just completely alien to us.
Yeah, totally different. And part of that is dealing with these unique conditions like zero gravity. The sources stress that this isn't just some cool party trick. It's a fundamental state of space travel you have to learn to live and work in.
Right. And once you're past the prep and actually on the journey, the sources capture this dual nature of the experience. On one hand, there's the amazing sensory stuff, feeling weightless, floating around, seeing Earth from orbit.
Oh yeah, that view.
Yeah, they present it as profoundly moving, that image of Earth hanging in space.
I can only imagine. It's easy to see why that pulls people in. But then the sources kind of pivot, don't they? They get into the harsh realities waiting out there. They look specifically at places like Venus, Mercury, Saturn, and they really detail why setting up colonies or just sustaining human life there is seen as, well, maybe not feasible or even impossible based on what they found.
Right, like Venus. The sources point out it rotates backwards, which is weird in itself. Similar size to Earth, okay, but no oceans. But the real deal breaker, according to the sources, is the heat. A blistering 484 degrees Celsius. That's because of a thick cloud cover that traps heat, but also makes it super bright from Earth. Plus, they mention continual thunderstorms and a surface just covered in many craters from asteroid impacts. So the insight is clear. Even a similar-sized planet can be totally hostile because of its atmosphere and heat.
Oh, 484 degrees. Yeah. That's not just hot. That's intense. Okay, then Mercury. The sources say it's much smaller, right? Like a third of Earth's size.
Yeah, tiny compared to other planets. And life is super difficult there, they say, mainly because it's so close to the sun and has almost no atmosphere.
No protection, basically.
Exactly. And because of that, its temperature varies more than on any other planet. Swings wildly from scorching hot to freezing cold. And crucially, the sources state, no water. That makes it unable to sustain life. So yeah, closeness to the sun, no air, no water, fundamental problems.
Okay, and Saturn. Yeah. We know more about it now, thanks to probes like Voyager. Those amazing rings, the large number of moons.
True, but the challenge highlighted in the sources is different. It has barely any solid surface. It's mostly gas.
So nowhere to stand, effectively.
Pretty much. And like Venus, the sources describe it as extremely hot, which makes human life impossible. So the big takeaway from looking at these neighbors, based on the sources, is just how varied and extreme these environments are. Crushing heat, no air, no surface, no water. It really hammers home how unique Earth's conditions are and how tough even those first steps outward really are.
And this is where things get a bit more complicated, maybe. A little messy. Because the sources also look back at us, at the footprint we're leaving in space. And it's not all positive. There's this big issue of space junk.
Yeah, it's a pretty stark reality they highlight. They specifically mention approximately 8,000 pieces orbiting Earth right now. Junk. And they give this really vivid example. A screwdriver lost during a space shuttle mission in 1985. Just
Right.
lost and never got it back. Still up there.
Screwdriver
Yeah.
from the 80s. Still orbiting. That's kind of unsettling, isn't it?
It really is. And the sources sort of suggest this is a form of carelessness,
Yeah.
that we're extending our bad habits from Earth into outer space, draws a parallel to environmental issues down here.
Right. It makes you think about how we manage this new frontier. What kind of legacy are we building already?
And this ties into the different views on space activities that also pop up in the sources. Like, some people flat out believe space exploration is a waste of money, questioning the cost versus the benefit.
Yeah, you hear that argument. But the sources also show this other side, that space stuff is deeply linked to ideas about wealth and technology.
Mm-hmm.
It involves big corporations, not just governments. And often it's about monitoring things back on Earth. So it's not just pure science. There are big economic drivers, too, according to these documents.
Which then feeds into this whole tricky idea of ownership in space. The sources kind of wade into that debate. They made the point, for example, that none of us think that the moon belongs to the U.S. simply because they planted a flag there. This notion that space is just too vast to be owned by any one nation, it's definitely present in the material.
How do you regulate or claim something with no real boundaries? It's a huge question.
And the sources actually give us a specific case study that touches on some of this. Skylab.
Ah, Skylab.
Yeah, the story's laid out quite clearly in the documents. Launched, crews lived up there for a while, but it got damaged early on, lost its meteor shield, and eventually it had this uncontrolled re-entry back in July 1979, broke apart over the Indian Ocean and parts of Australia.
Yeah, I remember reading about the concern that caused. The sources even mentioned someone offered a $10,000 reward for a piece of it.
Right, and this whole incident, along with things like the US and USSR race to the moon, it's presented in the sources as an example of that, competitive ambition driving nations. It's reported just as historical context from the sources, showing that mix of science, national pride, and, well, things not always going to plan.
So as we're dealing with all this, the dreams, the dangers, the junk, the competing interests, how do we even talk about it all? Which brings us to language, right? That's something the sources highlight too.
Exactly. The documents list out a bunch of words: atmosphere, outer, lunar, stellar, terrestrial, universal, cosmic, galactic, gravitational. And the point seems to be that these words aren't just labels. They form our whole way of thinking about it. They're the tools we use to understand and discuss everything beyond Earth.
Yeah, the language shapes how we see it. Even just calling our planet Earth and the idea found in the sources that we must take care of our planet, it shows this sort of human-centered view, doesn't it? Anchoring everything back to our home base.
It does. And, like we saw with Skylab, specific words like concern get used in the sources to describe reactions to events like that re-entry. It shows how language carries the emotional weight, the societal impact of what happens in space. The words we pick aren't neutral. They reflect our relationship with it all.
Okay, so let's try and tie these threads together. We've seen that huge pull of aspiration, the imagination driving us upwards, framed as this new frontier. But we've also faced the really tough reality of the training needed. And the fact that, based on what we know now, establishing human life on some nearby planet just seems physically impossible.
Right. And then there's the mixed legacy of our presence out there already. The real problem of space junk. The different opinions back here on Earth about its value and who owns space. Plus those historical moments like Skylab or the moon race that show national ambitions and sometimes unintended outcomes.
So this deep dive, based on all these sources, it really shows that humanity's journey into the cosmos is about so much more than just technology. It's also about wrestling with these fundamental questions. Where do we fit in? What impact do we have when we go exploring? And what does our collective future beyond Earth even look like?
Yeah, it really holds up a mirror to us, doesn't it? Our capacity for huge dreams, incredible ingenuity, but also maybe a bit of carelessness too.
So considering both that incredible aspiration pulling us towards the stars and all the major challenges, the ones the universe throws at us and the ones we kind of create ourselves, like space junk, what does our persistent, complicated desire to explore the universe really tell us about human nature itself? That feels like something worth thinking about as we keep looking up.